Good morning. Welcome back to the Ahn Rho Project, self-therapeutic multimedia project for me to solve all the problems and challenges in my life, as well as a self-improvement process for me to reach the goals and objectives set for myself. We have two live streams today, and give me about 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. I'm going to step into the camera view. So today's first two live streams has to deal with mostly the photographs you see on the top left and top right hand side of this live stream. It's going to be a little bit different today from my previous live streams, in the sense that I'm trying to cover a segment on travel, local travel locations and places. And so unlike my previous streams where I usually have, say, objects or materials or food to show to the camera in person, which you can tell by the title usually, you can see that I'm not going to be able to do that today, because anything that I'm going to talk about on live stream today is a place or a location, and so I need photographs. It's not like an object like this is. So with that being said, that's the first live stream. We're going to cover what you see is what you get. Welcome from Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, wherever you're from. Today we're going to cover in the first live stream some places, plazas mostly, of something like Chinatown. Reminds me of the old Hong Kong school days when, in the 1990s, the refugees from Hong Kong just went and scattered amongst the rest of the Western world. And so especially here in Canada, specifically Toronto and Vancouver, we have a lot of Chinatown or Chinese plazas, but traditional conservative Chinese, as opposed to the more communist Chinese that you are probably more familiar with in 2020. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about these places that I frequented, that I revisited after about maybe a decade or two of just not visiting at all. I'm going to talk a little bit about why I went on that sort of little trip and exploration over the weekend, and how it coincided with everything that happened with my brother coming back from university and one of my caregiver's birthday, in addition to all the other stuff that went down. And then the second live stream today, after this one ends, we're going to talk a little bit about, we're going to talk a lot actually about what sort of things me and my brother talked about, just some fun stuff. Again, not something I do typically on my live streams, but it's something that I plan to do maybe a year down the road. And it never hurts to start early, so maybe this one will be like a test run. Then we'll talk about games, some music, some things that we talked about in terms of just personal development and what's we've just been catching up. So that's going to be the second live stream. That being said, I think it's about time to just dive right into it. Usually I do the introduction, but I think that we have a lot to discuss today, so why don't we just dive right into it. If you want an introduction, just check my previous live streams right here on my 4 platforms and growing. Very soon I intend on adding podcasts to SoundCloud as well, but we'll see how that goes. When that happens, I'll let you know. So the first thing that I want to talk about today, again, what you see and what you get in the title, it mentions a clinic search. So what are we doing? What were we doing this Saturday and Sunday? Going to all these sorts of different Hong Kong traditional Chinese plazas, conservative Chinese plazas. I remember this is a lot of nostalgia, so this is going to be definitely a part of my storytelling playlist on YouTube, on Facebook. You'll find it there. But needless to say, it's part of storytelling because there's so much nostalgia and reminiscing from when I was a kid. And so back in the 90s, my caregivers would constantly bring me to Chinatown because they were refugees, and these are the places that sort of the refugees from Hong Kong sort of settled in and started their own communities. They had to, if you were a doctor or a lawyer escaping from Hong Kong, you had to restart and build from scratch. And a lot of them were just supermarket. They were just food stalls even, just built a little community. And so my caregivers would used to take me to Chinese clinics, small run family clinics at the time, which have now, after about 20, 30 years, this is pretty common phenomenon. No matter immigration happens all over the world for the past centuries upon centuries, but in recent days, the modern interpretation of that is to watch community build into from a sort of rural, small town setting into an urban setting. So you see a lot of photographs on the top left and right. I'm gonna have to refer to some of them, but starting from, I believe your left is my right. So how are we gonna do this? Your left is my right. So your right hand side on the top, I believe is a photograph of one of the plot, and they're all in the same location. I grouped those three photographs sort of together on this side and two on this side for purposes because that's sort of how I visited them in order. The top left going down, those three photographs are of almost three different clusters of plot. It's all one cluster of plaza within the same 1 to 2 intersections in the same block, and one might be on, say, the northwest side, the other on the northeast side, and then the other one is just maybe 500 meters down the street you'll find another plaza. And so all three of those plazas are kind of located within the sort of same city block, and city blocks are pretty small even though it's a suburban area. You can tell by the buildings on the plazas that they're quite old. These again dating back to the 90s, the 80s, the 70s, and they've just been bought and resold to previous owners to new owners, and then new businesses, just small businesses making use of these plazas. And so I was delving into these places that my caregivers back in the day in the 90s, my father and mother would bring me to. They were exploring at the time, obviously too, because them being refugees and being new to Canada and just settling in with everyone else, they were looking for places, the best eye doctor, the best optometrist, the best place for a family doctor, the best place for, say, for eating just in general, the best restaurant for Chinese stir fry, or, it's not always Chinese. Sometimes they were experimenting with Italian foods, different places for, say, if they're looking for not an insurance company, so they look for these business districts and plazas when you're first settling into a new country. And that's what all that is. On the top left, bottom left hand corner of this live stream are photographs of plazas that I remember when I was more than 20 years ago in 1995 to 2005, those 10 years. I remember visiting a lot of those plazas. In fact, one of those plazas over there, I think it's the very bottom right hand side, is something that very recently I had lunch with one of my friends who dates back for about 5 years. His colleague is a friend of my father's. And then there's another plaza in there that is, I believe, just the one above it, the one in the middle. You can see that there's, sort of like a billboard sign that mentions all the different businesses that are inside that plaza. One of those plazas I actually went to once with my father in order to get new frames of glasses. And so I'm going to take off my glasses right now. And I already spoke about how about maybe 3-4 weeks ago, one of my glasses I left on the floor while I was late for work. I was sitting outside by the bus stop and I forgot it. And lo and behold, obviously, you know what the fuck happened, right? The bus driver comes by and then he just, rolls right over it. And then my favorite glasses, which I've had for 15 years, and my condition on my eyes has not, my nearsightedness has not gone way up, so I could still use it. But my favorite glasses, which were kind of wide angle, traditional, and slim, just broke. And so I've been looking for a new optician. I noticed that the optometrist and optician that I go to nowadays, they always sell these wide frames, big colorful frames. They always like the thick frames. I don't like that. I like these sort of slim, very thin frames. And I was wondering if I went back to these sort of 1990s, early 2000s clinics, if they still sold the same frames of eyeglasses. So that was a bit of exploration for me. And part of the motivation was not just for new frames of the old style, which are just kind of minimalist, but also a large part of it is, I mentioned wanting to leave the company that I'm in right now because I feel that I'm not the best of a team player that they require. I feel like I've let down my boss, my colleagues in a sense, and I think that they could do better with another teammate, with someone else who could take my role. And so I just feel like, this is the right time for me. They've always encouraged me to use up my benefits, and I think this is the right time. So just about a week ago, I submitted my dental claims for my dentistry appointment. I feel like this is the right time for me to also use my um, using the benefits to pay for a new frame or a new set of prescription eyeglasses. I believe it's only about $150, but that's more than enough. I'll pay the rest out of pocket. So that's why I was exploring there. That's why it says clinic search in the live stream title. At the same time, I was only looking for that, but there's also orthotics. So if you know what orthotics are, again, another thing covered by my workplace benefits: dental, optometry, of course, pharmacy, as well as orthotics. So orthotics, just covers your foot, right? Everyone walks a little bit differently. You have a different anatomy, your bone structure, your walking habits. And over time, when you get into your 50s and 60s, as you age into your late middle age to retirement, your joints begin to wear away and you develop arthritis and so on and so forth. So one of those things that I want to capitalize on for my benefits for my workplace is definitely the orthotics, because I am working a very physically demanding job, lots of shipping, receiving, just lifting 50, 60 pounds, very rigorous stuff, and I'm in the bottleneck of like 5 teams. And so it's helpful for me to get a pair of orthotics, again, fully covered by my benefits. And so these plazas, again, I would just go there and I felt like I could explore, see if I could find a clinic that, just to explore. Now, the funny thing is, of course, the whole COVID-19 thing is going down at the same time. And in my sort of town, my demographic right now, we have things under control because everyone wears masks. Compliance with common sense rules are in place. Again, I guess Asian countries are really good with this, but I'm not living in an Asian country, but still in Canada, we're pretty good with compliance because people tend to trust the government to some extent, that they believe, okay, at least when it comes to healthcare, we can trust them with that because it's publicized. So it's public, and as a result, there isn't this sort of like do or die sort of mindset. As a result, there's a lot of trust. There isn't this sort of money versus what health and well-being kind of mindset up here in Canada. We don't have that kind of stuff going down. So if you're from UK, you're familiar with this as well. If you're from Australia, you're familiar with this as well. But things like Hong Kong and the US, certainly you don't have that. It's a little bit more cruel when it comes to healthcare. And when it comes to compliance to public health recommendations, I'm pretty sure that compliance is a lot lower because people have less trust in government policy. So with that being said, the whole relevance to this is obviously, even though I was exploring, I still had to be careful, and I didn't actually enter any of those shops or clinics that you see in the photographs. I just walked on by and took a look from the outside because obviously I don't want to mingle with other people during these times. Finally, the last thing I want to talk about on the top right, my left is your right, so your right hand side, 2 photographs on that side. What's there? Okay, I'm gonna have to step behind camera because you can't see what the photographs are. Okay, so I got it. So that's actually a billboard sign of a city of Toronto. It's not a billboard, but it's like a board, and that's a posting saying that there's 2 photographs, right? One is sort of like this very distant mall. It wasn't a good photograph. I apologize. And then below it is this sign from the city of Toronto. And what's happened is obviously these are old plazas. And so one of those plazas is actually it has plans for reconstruction, demolition, and then reconstruction into what seems to be, that board says, planned by urban planning from the city of Toronto, a long-term care center, so a seniors home. In long story short, you may have heard that there's been this whole sort of, I wouldn't say controversy, but definitely a shortcoming in terms of long-term care housing and whole COVID-19 thing. So many people died as a result of COVID-19 because the long-term care homes in Toronto specifically, and all over in Canada, we don't have, it's still privatized. Long story short, the long-term care homes are privatized, so it's still a for-profit system. And so although we have a healthcare system that's public, the long-term care housing is private. And so that was a disaster. And in fact, so many of these houses failed to meet proper regulations and health safety standards because they were all privatized and everyone who was running them was for profit. And there was this sort of people versus money kind of thing going on. Again, you don't want to fuck with that when it comes to healthcare, right? When it comes to private business and economics, that's fine. But when it comes to healthcare, obviously health is a priority number one. That's just kind of common sense. And unfortunately, you know, I guess that's one of those things that the government, so ever since COVID-19 came out and that became a bombshell that sort of broke loose into the public eye, this topic, it seems to me that, you know, they want to start creating more long-term care facilities for seniors. That's the best way I can put it, more senior homes. But, you know, I don't know if that's part of it or not, and I don't know if that's a result of COVID-19. That's probably just something that was planned way in advance anyways. A lot of these plazas, again, are set for demolition because they're so old and the demographic of people have changed. Certainly that means that a lot of these plazas are more empty than they are sustainable. And that's unfortunate because I hold a lot of memories and nostalgia with these places, but that's too bad. You know, it's time goes by, you know, bid your farewell, and I'm certainly bidding my farewell with that particular plaza. With that being said, this is the first of 2 live streams. I think that's everything I have to cover today. You may notice that I am sitting down and there's no objects here aside from some garbage, but I don't want to cover that today, especially this live stream. This first of 2 live streams has been pretty long-winded, but the stuff here, sorry, it's early in the morning, I should sort of. This kind of stuff here is just stuff maybe I'll cover tomorrow morning. It's food related. Now I'm going to jump onto the second live stream today, and it's going to be talking about some fun stuff with my brother, some stuff that we cover in gaming, some music, some shit like that, as well as a little bit of personal development and just catching up. We'll talk about that in the second live stream. This is the Ahn Rho Project. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you in about 90 seconds to about 2 minutes when I set up the second live stream right here on Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, blah, 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 wherever you're from. See you there shortly.